Final Fantasy 16 is an imperfect masterpiece in every sense of the word. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, for starters, it's a phenomenal story. The writer, I don't know anybody's name. I apologize. It's been like a month since I've finished the game, so some things I don't remember, some things I do, so just bear with me. But the lead writer, or at least the lead of the narrative team, was the lead writer of Final Fantasy XIV Shadowbringers, which is regarded as the best expansion of the game. At least that's what I've been told. My friend told me that if I loved 16, that I'm gonna love 14. That I have a lot to look forward to. So with that being said, there are parts that aren't that great. And it's not the narrative. In fact, I have no problems with anything that happens in the main story whatsoever. It's stuff that happens outside of the main story that's not so great. It's the side quest. It's a little bit of the pacing. But overall, I recommend it. So if that's all you needed, then, there you go. Go buy it. Have fun. But what do I know, right? It's your money. Do with it as you will, not as what I will. But with that being said, let's talk about why it's imperfect and why it's a masterpiece. So I'm not going to discuss any big narrative spoilers. It's a game, you gotta play it. Even now, you have to play it. It's a game like God of War, right? 2018, God of War Ragnarok. It's one of those games where, for me to, one, tell you the main plot, we'd be here for 30 minutes. And this isn't a retrospective of this game. We might do one down the line, in all honesty. I don't know. I do have to play it again for New Game Plus to get the Platinum. But right now, this is just a base telling of the story, right? So, the story begins with you assuming control of Clive Rossfield, and you are a part of a mercenary group known as the Bastards. You are sent to a battlefield where a war between two warring nations is going on. You are to hunt down and kill the dominant Shiva. Now, what are dominants? Dominants are people with special abilities. They were born with a gift, so they can inherit the powers and the personification of dominance, which is this game's version of classic Final Fantasy summons. So you have Shiva, Titan, Garuda, Ifrit, Phoenix, Bahamut, Odin. I think the only one that they say is lost to time is Leviathan, right? So then the next part of that is you're chasing her down, you get hit on the head, and we get taken back to a flashback of Clive's childhood. And in his childhood, we find out that his brother is the dominant of the Phoenix, that Clive's mother thinks he's a stain on the family because he wasn't the dominant and he's the firstborn. And then your father shows up and says, all right, we have to go to Phoenix Gate to perform the rites, or there's a ritual. You go there, everything goes south. And I mean everything goes south. We find out there's another dominant of fire. It's Ifrit. Everyone's like, Hubbada, what? What do we do now? And then Clive gets sold off into slavery. I'm not going to say any more about what happens because honestly it's something that you should play. If I'm correct, the demo is still free on the PlayStation Store. I highly recommend that you go and play that. So then you get taken back to the present day, and you find the dominant of Shiva. Before you kill her, you realize she's your childhood friend Jill. You don't kill her. Then the greatest character in this game, Sidolphus, shows up. And listen, if you know, you know. This one's for you, Sid. Anyway, Sidolphus rolls in, and this is where Clive's motivations start to shift a little bit. He has his own motivations, his own plan of what he wants to do. But he's slowly getting brought into Sid's world, to Sid's plans, to Sid's ideals and ideas. And he gets kind of taken along for the ride, and that's where the main story goes. And that's it. That's all I'm going to say on the main story, because it's honestly something that you need to experience for yourself. So then let's talk about the gameplay. There's a lot of different mechanics. There's a crafting system, which isn't too in-depth. There's a gear system, which isn't too in-depth, but honestly, I don't mind that. You have a sword, you have 2 armor slots, and you have 3 accessories. Now, when you start up the game, you can choose to play in story focus or action focus. They're self-explanatory, but story focus gives you access to 4 rings, which give you kind of a buff, so to speak. I used the Ring of Timely Evasion, which prompts a quick time event and slows down time before you're attacked, so you can do a precision dodge and then counter perfectly. And I use the Ring of Timely Strike, so instead of comboing manually, which can make the combat more intense and more... It gives the combat more depth, so to speak. What the ring does is it auto-combos for you. Turns it into a semi-button masher. You spam square, and the game will auto-combo using all the abilities you have equipped, the magic, your weapon, that sort of thing. When I say semi-button masher, is because you can still manually use your abilities. You don't have to just leave it all up to the computer, which is what I did. I used the Ring of Timely Strikes. I auto-comboed for a little bit, and then I would manually use certain icon abilities in succession because I liked how they synergized. And that still gave me some autonomy over the game, which I like. The game gives players the choice of how they want to play, what they want to focus on, but it still doesn't take away the autonomy entirely. I believe I'm using that word right. I hope I am. So, you have a hideout. You go from main mission to main mission. At the end of each main mission, you return to your hideout, where you can brush up on the lore via your encyclopedia and your lore masters, which kind of give you a state of the realm, a state of relationships with Clive, where there's basically a graph that has Clive in the center, and everybody you interact with has a line drawn to him and to each other. It shows how they interact, what's their relationship status. If they get into a fight, it'll say so, and this updates as the game progresses. The same thing with the map of the realm. The map of the realm has a timeline at the bottom that you can kind of skip in between different parts, and it'll show you where Clive is in respects to the greater happenings of the realm. So there's 2 nations fighting off to the east, and Clive's at the west. You can move your cursor and see what was happening in the east, and then you move your cursor back, and it shows what you did as Clive in the west while that was going on. So I think that's really neat. It's stuff I did revisit every time I came back. It kind of just refreshes you through what's going on, because this game is very dense. People equate this to Game of Thrones. There's a lot of kingdoms. There's a lot of nations. There's a lot of named characters that you're always interacting with directly and indirectly, and there's just a lot going on. To the point where during cutscenes, you can hit the touchpad on the controller, and it brings up an active lore. It's like an active codex. You know, a splash screen pops up, you have different bubbles all over the place, and, you know, say you're talking to a character, I'll use Kupka, right? And you're like, man, what's that guy's deal again? You hit the touchpad, find his name, click. You're reading, you go, oh, that's right, he's a jerk. And you close the thing and you watch the rest of the cutscene. It's very useful. I used it more in the beginning of the game to get acquainted with the lore and to get a better grip on the world, and not so much as the end of the game where they don't give you too many new lore entries, so to speak. So the other things in your kind of hideout is you have a blacksmith where you can craft new weapons and armor and upgrade them. You have a shop where you can purchase potions, music for your hideout's jukebox, weapons, armor. You also have a memorabilia room, or like a mementos room in the upper part of the hideout, which you'll get mementos for doing certain main quests, and you'll get mementos for doing certain side quest chains. Although, one thing I don't like is you don't know what side quest change gives you those. So if you want to fulfill that room and you're just like, that's the one thing you want to do, it's like you're like, I just want to do the main story and get all the little mementos so I can look at the pretty things. Have fun. I mean, you could Google it. Yeah, sure. You could probably look up a guide, see which side quest chains to go and do, but just know certain side quests get locked out during certain main story beats. So that's very important. Speaking of side quests, there's a couple that you can do. You have a hunting board which has monsters and notorious criminals and bandits, and that updates with new targets throughout the main story. You'll go there and it'll give you a general direction. It'll show you what kind of creature they are, most times. It'll show you where they are, most times, but when it does, it's very general. It'll say something like, I'm trying to think of the Glades in Sandbreck. That's not a real place. Sandbreck is in the game, but the Glades I don't think is. And you open up your map and you go over there and you fast travel, and then you have to hunt it down manually. There's no marker or waypoint until after you encounter the beast for the first time, say if you die. That way you can find it easier. Next to your hunting board is you have your side quest vendors, and there's 2 of them for a specific reason. The first kind of shows you where the side quests are. You talk to him, and instead of opening your map and manually going through each node trying to find where the side quests are, you talk to him, and he's got everything broken up into 4 sections. These are the side quests in Rosaria, these are the side quests in Dalmekia, these are the side quests in Sandbreck, and these are the side quests in the other joint over in the east. And when you click it, it shows you where on the map they are, and I believe it lets you fast travel to them. Don't quote me on that, because I didn't use it too much. I manually went into the zones and just kind of mapped my own path and did it kind of in a circle. Next to him is your renown vendor. Now, what is renown? Well, when you do side quests, and when you do monster hunts, you gain renown from the patrons and the people in the kingdoms. And what happens is when you hit a certain threshold, because it's collective, it's not a spendable currency, it's a cumulative, rather. You get your cumulative renown, you go to your vendor, and she goes, oh, and you get a little letter from an anonymous donor, right? It's like subs and tips from Twitch, just, medieval and for killing monsters. So you get different rewards. You get potions. Sometimes you'll get gear. You'll get crafting materials. You'll get armor and weapons sometimes. It's very rare. Those are the very expensive ones. You gotta do a lot to get those. But if you want to take a break from the main story and you want to do the side quests, you can go and do them. There is a third type of side quest besides normal side quests and the monster hunts, and those are your unlockable side quests. Now, what they do is they unlock rewards and gear for you, so to speak. So what they do is they give you upgrades for the potency of your potions, right? They heal more. Or they'll give you an upgrade for your bags so you can carry more potions. Or, your armor does this much more damage. Or you get a mount, which I suggest getting the mount because there's a lot of walking. It may not be a massive open world like some of these other games, but the sections are open. You'll have these little sections that kind of intertwine and connect as you go through the game, and then that just becomes one giant section. So I suggest doing them. The rewards are useful. You're going to need them. If you want to upgrade all your gear and get the best swords, then you're going to have to do these quests, and you're going to have to do the monster hunts, because the monster hunts give you crafting materials for the ultimate weapon. However, there's technically 2. There's one in the base playthrough, and then the true Ultima weapon, which is a mainstay in Final Fantasy games, is only available in New Game Plus. So you do all that, and you do your unlockable side quests, and that's great. You take your break from the main story, and as you're doing side quests, you're like, he's not good. This is one of the problems I have with Final Fantasy 16. These side quests are very MMO-like. They are very, go there and bring me 5 apples, or go there and kill those 3 bandits for me, will ya? And you go there and you kill the 3 bandits and you come back and he goes, okay, here's 10 gil. Side quest done. You get the the banner and everything. It sucks. Some of them are more, like I said, there are quest chains that are tied to characters you meet. Those are the better ones in my opinions. Those are the more in-depth ones. But the rest of them, not that great. Not that good. And that's one of my problems with the game. My other problem is the pacing towards the middle of the game. It does slow down a little bit. It doesn't drag, thankfully. I will say, overall, this game is near perfectly paced. It gets a little slow in the middle. You tend to do a little more side quests, and this is this is what happened with Hogwarts Legacy is I got to the middle of the game and it kind of just like slows a little bit and it's not moving. You gotta do some side quests, and then it goes up and down and up and down, and then it's just all gas, no brakes. That's how 16 is. And when you hit that all gas moment, it is phenomenal. It is one of my favorite just like blocks of a game in a long time. But the pacing, you know, there's that middle part. It's just like, I gotta do more side quests. You'll talk to a character, you'll come back from a mission, she's like, oh, thanks, Clive. I'll let you know when we're ready. And that's it, there's no quest objectives. You go off and do side quests. After a certain amount, he'll come back and he's like, hey, let's go do the thing. And you're like, all right, neat. You can, I shouldn't have worded it that way. I don't think you have to mandatorily do side quests unless it's like a tutorial. I think for the most part you can just go beat by beat by beat by beat by beat by beat by beat. I did side quests because I wanted to be a little over leveled. I like being over leveled in games like these. And there is an item you can get which boosts your experience, which I used, and I have no shame in that. I played on story focus with those 2 rings, and my last accessory was a flat 15% XP bonus. I think it's 15 or 5. It's enough. It's enough and it's worth it. I will say that. So that's about it between the good parts and the bad parts, honestly. As I touched on combat. It's very character action focused. My one friend said it was baby's first DMC, and I said, and? What's your point? It doesn't mean it's not fun. It is not as heavy of an RPG, and I think that's what some people's problem with it is because it's Final Fantasy. People are like, I want it to be an RPG, and I'm like, I know, but this is fun. What do you want me to do? I will say, on top of your sword play, I mentioned icon abilities. The more side quests you do, the more ability points you'll get, and that's how you'll be able to upgrade your icon abilities and unlock new ones. So if you want all the abilities and you want to have this kit that's just, you feel like a god, do your side quests, get your ability points. It'll be worth it in that regard. Otherwise, you get a good amount of ability points. If you kind of just do side quests and monster hunts as you're going through the thing, you'll get ability points and you'll find icon abilities that you love, and you'll stick to, I'll call it that rotation. Not a rotation in the MMO sense, but that selection of abilities. And you may stick with the same ones throughout the entire game. And if you do that, then, good on you. But overall, I think Final Fantasy 16 may be, I'm looking at my shelf of all my games. Honestly, it's probably going to be my game of the year. I did have a discussion with a friend, and I don't remember if I mentioned this at the top of the video, so I'm going to mention it again, where my friend said if they didn't play Tears of the Kingdom, Final Fantasy 16 would have been their game of the year. So it's one of those games, like, I've seen it be divisive online between people, but from everyone I talk to, it's a banger. It's a straight banger. So I definitely recommend it. With all that being said, go check the PlayStation Store. If the demo's free, download the demo. It'll give you an idea of what the game is going to be, so you can figure out if you want to play it or not. If you still want to wait for a sale, then wait for a sale. I will never tell you guys to buy a game if you don't have the money. I always recommend games based on my experience. I recommended this game. I think this is a must-buy. With that being said, you buy it when you're comfortable buying it. If you want to wait until next year and you can get it used for $10 at a GameStop, get it used for $10 at a GameStop. At least play it. That's it. That's all I do, but just recommend games. But with that all being said, I do want to thank you guys for watching. I hope you had a good time. And now, I'm looking at my PS5. I'm going to go work on my next video because That the next game I'm playing, that's got some problems, but we'll cross that bridge and roll that dice when we get there. But until then, thank you all so much for watching. Have a great day and take care.